Welcome back to Hiking with Kathleen. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to be retired early, so in your 50s, so that you can retire not only financially secure, but doing what you love doing. Stay with me. The release of today's video coincides with my 2-year anniversary of entering retirement, and I've never looked back. So to give you a little bit of background, Shannon, my spouse, and I planned this retirement in 2020 by sitting down with me as a financial planner for our household and for many other clients. And we reviewed our finances and looked ahead to see what it was we want to do. A lot of times what I find is individuals who are contemplating retirement are doing so with the intention of making sure that they have either a lump sum or a pension plan, things of that nature, ready for them to retire, but they don't really know what that number will produce for them. So I've got some tips to help you with that, so that maybe it'll help you to make a more comfortable plan of retirement. To give you some background as to how Shannon and I planned our retirement together, there was a lot that had to do with what we planned to do with our activity time, with our family time. So for about a year prior to my retirement, Shannon had retired a couple years before I did, and on a monthly basis, she and I sat down and we reviewed our finances. Here's what that meant. I had created a financial plan for our family income. She has hers, I have mine in terms of financial assets and income. But we were planning as a couple, so that's the way we looked at it. We sat down and reviewed our financial plan, and that took into consideration any gains and losses in our investment value. But that itself is not the most important part. The most important part of the financial plan is knowing how you're going to spend the money with anticipated expenses. So we looked at the kind of lifestyle we wanted to enjoy, and we knew that camping was going to be a part of it. So we didn't yet have a trailer when we started planning our retirement, and we knew that camping would be part of it so that we could travel around and see our beautiful country. So the things that we felt were most important is looking at how far afield we would travel in our travel trailer that we hadn't yet purchased. So we wanted to know and plan for the number of times we would go away each camping season, and the approximate cost according to what we knew at that time, including gas prices and campground fees, food, things of that nature. So we sat down, reviewed our numbers once a month, just to make sure that we had taken everything into consideration. And those things also included things like groceries at home, haircuts. We are fans of live theater, so we wanted to incorporate theater packages as a regular staple for each year. So we knew that the expenses that we were calculating or counting on were ones that were going to continue. And so we just planned for those expenses to continue for as long as we felt we would be enjoying an active lifestyle. And so we realized that not always would we want to have a house. We would probably want to downsize, but that would be at a time when we would no longer require space for the travel trailer to sit out on the driveway, our kayaks and canoe that we have in the backyard, when we were no longer looking at engaging in those kinds of activities, that we felt we'd probably downsize to a condo or some sort of a rented facility, whether it be somebody else's condo or an apartment or something of that nature, with a more turnkey approach. So we built in those expenses. What would that look like, and what would be the age that we would probably consider seeing that change take place? And we also built in long-term care expenses. For those of you who have watched the channel for a period of time, you may realize or remember that I was very, very close to my late mother, who passed away just a little over 2 years ago. And it was during that time that I was looking after my parents' finances and as their financial planner. So I knew the expenses that would be incurred for long-term care, and my dad would be in retirement living. So both of them had rents of a sort. And so Shannon and I used those numbers and indexed them to inflation and figured, what if that were to happen to us at, say, age 85? That was the age of my mother when she entered long-term care. And because my dad is currently 95 years old, I said, honey, we're both going to live to 100. We'll just make that part of our financial plan, so that we want to make sure we have all of our expenses covered until age 100. So that gives you some sort of an idea of the methodology that we went through. And as I say, I had lots of practice with that as a financial planner for many clients, and saw that a lot of times folks were looking at their expenses today and not considering how they could change. So we also made sure that we had money put aside in order to pay a monthly health premium, so that we would always have, if we had medication needs, if we had other healthcare needs that are not covered under our current universal health system in Ontario. So anyway, that's something that's very important, and neither one of us takes a prescription. But we took out the package that would pay the most, because you never know what kind of treatments we might require down the road, and we wanted to make sure we were covered, because trying to get them down the road, you won't qualify. So you have to get medical and life insurance coverage and things like that when you're healthy. And so that's what we did. So that gives you an idea of sort of the financial piece. So we knew how much income we would require to cover our expenses. And then if there's any sort of a change to that, because maybe markets go down and you have investments that are not producing the kind of income you need it to, you reduce your expenses. So we knew that we would always be able to live within our means. And everything before entering retirement was debt-free. So we had no car payments. Mortgage was looked after years ago. So the only kind of expenses we had on an ongoing basis were just things like our, hydro bill, groceries, things of that nature that are regular ongoing expenses. So that's what helped us with our planning. So some of the tips that I'd offer to you, from having been a certified financial planner for 22 years, is to give yourself permission to retire and know that you won't necessarily have a title when you retire, but you'll have perhaps a lot of happiness and freedom. So some of the tips I use in order to look after the financial piece, because that is a really important piece so you're not fretting, so to make sure that you can make ends meet and that you haven't made the decision too early, is that you have to be a very good budgeter. You have to know your expenses cold. And those are the expenses that are expected expenses and anticipated costs. So you want to make sure that you have a list of those that carry you through from pre-retirement, retirement, and then as you get into the senior years where you may require extra care, like long-term care or retirement living home. So you look at all of those expenses, and what I always anticipate is that my investments will average 4%. There will be years they'll make minus 4%. There'll be years they make 12%. If I make 4%, my financial plan is solid. And that's a very reasonable rate of return. That may change by the time you look at this video, but that's what I've used, and for my lifespan, my longevity, to age 100. I think it's reasonable given that I have a father who's 95. My mother survived to age 89. So I expect fully that it's possible that I may in fact live to age 100. So therefore, I can't run out of money prior to that time. So these are some of the tips for the financial pieces. You want to look at how are you going to be spending your money. So that is where your budget comes into play. What your investments are worth, what other kind of income can you count on, whether they be government pensions, defined benefit pension plans, which are the ones that have a guaranteed income level. So all said and done, the financial piece of your retirement puzzle is extremely important. But there's another piece that's almost as important, and that is, what are you going to do with your time? What are your passions, hobbies, interests? So I retired in September 2020, and I retired from a very stressful point in my life. I had just lost my mother, with whom she would have been the person I was closest to for almost all of my 56 years at that point. And we were going through the pandemic, and I made sure that I helped all of my clients and offered them assurances that we had done what was needed to be done to reduce the risk to their portfolio or to help them get to where they needed to go. So the retirement tips that helped me was that I didn't enter retirement until everything was debt-free. I bought a new truck prior to retirement. I knew that we would be getting a travel trailer, so I needed something that would tow us. We got our travel trailer. That was paid for. The house mortgage was paid off years ago, so no outstanding debt. So tip number one, enter retirement debt-free. Tip number two, know your budget cold. Know what your expenses are going to come to on a normal basis, and then cushion that for times when things are a little bit more expensive, like in this temporary high inflationary period where right now inflation is sitting at about 8%. Normally it would sit at about 2%. So just know that this isn't permanent, but this is the reality that we're facing right now. So know your expenses, know that you can cover inflation. I usually project at 3%. In investments themselves, when I was doing up our financial plan, I projected they would grow at, on average, 4% a year. That means some years it might have grown at 2%, minus 4%, 12%, but overall the average was about 4%. That's what we are expecting our investments to grow at. And the other thing is lifespan. You want to make sure that you have an appropriate lifespan so that you know that you're not going to run out of money if you should survive to that time. The danger, the risk that most people face is that they'll run out of money because we tend to be living longer and longer. So for me, I projected lifespan to age 100 for both myself and for Shannon. So those are the tips that I would offer to you. And once you have your financial part looked after, I'll talk to you next about how to plan for some of your time as a new retiree. Sometimes the hardest part for a retiree, I think, to come to terms with is how to manage their time. And sometimes folks are just happy to get out of the workforce and just kick back, read a book, maybe plan to do a lot of traveling. And those are things that we definitely need, I think, especially early on in our retirement, maybe the first 6 months. And then once you get sort of settled into a routine, it's a matter of figuring out what kind of routine feels good to you. So as far as our routine goes, since I can only draw on our experience, for the first 3 months of my retirement, I was still coming down from a lot of stress. Stress of being a financial planner through the coronavirus pandemic, the hardship of losing my mom a few months prior to that. So she passed away April 28th of 2020, and I retired September 1st of 2020. Probably one of the hardest parts of my job was settling her estate. And yeah, so that was a big loss. But once I was looking after everybody's uncertainty during the pandemic, I wanted to take stock of what I needed to do for me. And I knew that returning to nature would be the thing that would be best for me. My first career was as a naturalist. I worked in that field for 10 years. It's related to my degree in biology. And after doing that for 10 years, I moved into self-employment and worked as a financial planner for 22 years. So it was time for me to return to my first love, being outside, being among wildlife. So I started doing that just with a cell phone in hand and did some footage, Facebook live feeds with friends, noticing and wanting to tune in when I was looking at, a deer or a mink and things like that in the early days. And when I realized that there seemed to be a bit of interest, that's when my thought process moved ahead to starting up this YouTube channel. This didn't take place until February of 2021. So, about 6 months into my retirement is when I was ready to commit to something. So I guess my suggestion for anybody contemplating retirement, the financial piece is extremely important, but almost as important is what are you going to do with your time. And some people like to consider working at a part-time job and things of that nature. That didn't even occur to me, and it's because I didn't give up a well-paying job to work somewhere for a lot less and then have to work around those hours to do what I wanted to do with my retirement hours, my retirement life. So it made sense to me that since I love nature and used to be a naturalist, so used to interpret nature, I thought, I don't know, I think people are interested in this. So that's why I started up this YouTube channel. And I decided on the schedule of uploading a new video once a week. So I knew that if I was going to be hiking 3-4 days a week, that the other time I would put into editing the video. So I had to learn all those skills of how to edit videos. I did online courses in preparation for this. Fortunately, I bought a camera and some lenses and did that prior to retirement. So a lot of my big expenses I took upon myself to pay off prior to retirement. And that gave me a really good jumping point. So when it comes to your plan for how to spend your time in retirement, I think it's really important to bring peace into your life, especially if you had a stressful career or a demanding career. And only you will know what that means to you in terms of how to enjoy your time. And if it is reading, and if it is camping, if it is walks in nature, cycling, working out at the gym to get yourself in really great shape, only you know the answer there. But I think it's the part that a lot of people overlook, and they don't really know how to plan their time. So a typical day, even though on YouTube it looks probably a little different in terms of how my life is with Shannon. Shannon and I have been married since 2014, and we've been together since 2011. So, and we were both working for, certainly the first, well, more than the first half of it, about 2/3 of our relationship. We were both working full time. So our retirement lifestyle together is where we each go off and do our own thing until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She is an avid pickleball player. She hangs out with a really great group of friends, goes for lunch with them, and just enjoys her time on and off the court with these folks. As for me, I spend a lot of those hours out in the woods, and I've come to know a lot of people over the course of my time out in the woods, people who have similar interests, or they're just interested in talking about whatever they've sighted on the trail that day. But 2 o'clock in the afternoon is the time when we reconvene pretty well from wherever we are at home, and we sit down and talk about our day so far over a cup of tea. So from then on, we tend to spend the rest of the day, together, maybe doing things together, or maybe just together in our home. There are times, of course, you see us out camping and paddling, and that absolutely happens, and we're together, a lot of the time that we are away. Like when we went to Newfoundland this past summer, that was for a month, and we spent pretty much that whole month together. But we do have our own routines on a normal basis, like on an everyday basis. And I think that's where sometimes it can be a hard adjustment for people who are retiring and they haven't yet thought of what to do with their time. And that's why it's, I think, really important to find your own interests that are outside of your relationship. Your own interests that will make you want to get out of bed in the morning or in the afternoon, whatever your schedule happens to be. When I was working, I was typically getting up at about 6 in the morning. I was excited for the day, and I would sit down, I'd read the news, and then I'd launch into my emails and get my work done. Now I'm up at about 4 in the morning. So I'm already wired to be a morning person, but I love what I do so much that, yes, I still like to read the news and stay on top of things. And then I like to be out in the woods by the time the sun is rising. And that's when I can see the most interesting wildlife sightings, capture the most beautiful scenes. And that's the kind of magic I have learned about during my retirement. So, all said and done, how to spend your time in retirement by knowing what your passion might be, or being willing to find a passion, being willing to find hobbies and interests. And that way it helps to keep relationships really exciting, because then you can share your newfound interest or news of the day with each other. Yeah, I think that's what keeps things fresh for Shannon and myself. So I hope those things have helped you today. I'm very excited to say that it's 2 years that I've been retired, haven't looked back, and I absolutely love what I'm doing. And although right now YouTube isn't paying me for providing these videos to you, I'm excited to share with you that I've been approached by a local cable network to use my YouTube videos in their programming. That's Rogers TV. That's in southwestern Ontario, Canada. So I invite you to look that up. That schedule is to begin around the middle of September. And it will be billed Hiking with Kathleen. And it'll be in the lineup of 1 hour's worth of videos to be shown each week. And so I just hope that I can reach a broader audience. I invite you to stay tuned to our new uploads that we put on the channel every Tuesday morning. If you enjoy shorts that are under 1 minute long, we launched that on our channel. I primarily do it and lay over a little bit of music in that. Shannon's got the gift of being able to do that over these longer videos that are 20, 30 minutes long. But those short videos are uploaded every Friday at 6 p.m. local time, Ontario time, Eastern Standard. Thanks for your time. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider subscribing. Consider giving it a like if you enjoyed it, and please share with me your comments below so I can see maybe how you have benefited from your retirement lifestyle, or maybe if some of my tips have maybe helped your way of planning. Thanks a lot. Bye for now. you.